In the last episode, we talked about how a lack of acceptance can make life difficult for LGBTQ teens, but we never covered a primary struggle in finding acceptance, the one within yourself. Finding identity is something that not only LGBTQ teens, but people everywhere struggle with. But it is a key component to finding peace with who you are and who you identify as. In everyday life, we think of identity as a term that defines who we are. Our identity is important to us and helps us through our lives. In the world of LGBTQ terminology, identity means more or less the same thing, but with one slight change. Identity, in these terms, defines who we are inside, our gender identity, and our sexuality. Finding identity can be hugely important, but it's not easy.
You don't really know who's what and where you can go and what you can do to help.
So I think the dangerous part is when you try to push yourself in a box and stifle yourself in it, and that's really uncomfortable.
It's a bit difficult. I think it's difficult for all teenagers who are figuring out their own identity. Having a different sexual orientation or gender orientation is another piece of the identity puzzle, so to speak, and it's hard.
Identity can be an extremely difficult thing to find in oneself because it's such a highly personalized concept.
It really does vary person to person. I'm not too concerned about the terminology personally, but I would not question an individual's choice to use particular terminology if it feels like it fits for them.
One person may strongly feel that they identify as the opposite gender, but someone else may feel that the lines of binary genders aren't as clear-cut. Because of this, it's important to remember that gender and sexuality aren't black or white, male or female, gay or straight. It's better to think of spectrums, like this gender unicorn demonstrates. This unicorn depicts separate sliders for sexual and romantic preferences, as well as physical characteristics and gender. Although it isn't perfect, the unicorn provides an excellent visualization of the crazy varied spectrums of gender and sexuality.
For individuals, whatever their gender or sexual identity may be, I wish that perception could change.
Recently, a considerable amount of new terminology has appeared in the LGBTQ community. Some of these terms have made their way to becoming widely known descriptions of identity, but many remain in obscurity. Though some people think this explosion of new terminology has gotten out of hand, most agree that even if the descriptions are becoming more obscure, it's worth it to find security in identity.
You don't have to have a label in order to be in the LGBT community. You can just know that you are, but it is sometimes nice to be able to have a label.
People are generally getting to be a lot more specific on things, and it's kind of hard. I think it's kind of hard for people who aren't identifying as those identities to understand that maybe these identities are what helps people be comfortable.
As mentioned, identity is an incredibly important part of who we are, regardless of gender or sexuality. But one question remains unanswered. How do we find our identity? The process of discovering your identity, from identifying your sexual preference to discovering your true inner self, can be long, difficult, and often uncompleted. Finding identity is different for everyone, so it's hard to provide instruction on completing the search. However, some things can provide help and make this journey easier. Find a supportive community who will provide advice and acceptance, and remember to be as true to yourself as possible.
Just finding a group of people that understands you is generally the best way to go.
Come and we'll hug you and support you.
To be able to be yourself is just such a freeing experience.
we can learn. We can learn how to accept ourselves and learn how to accept our own personal identity. And it's just, it's a process, but we're getting there.